Welcome back to another episode of Torqued. Well, it's another great day. We're installing a set of Wilwood brakes on the front end of that 1965 Mustang convertible. So let's head out to the barn and get to work. All right, so we're back on the Mustang, and I always love when one of these boxes show up. So let's go ahead and open this up and see what's inside. All right, so I ordered this Wilwood kit for the front from Summit Racing. This is designed for, I believe, for both the manual and the power brakes for the Mustang, the 65 Mustang. So let's go ahead and open this up and see some of the stuff that's inside. Decals. Oh, these are your pads. These must be some adapter plates. This kit is 12.19 inches for the rotors. Looks like the caliper mounts. All of our hardware. Oh, then there they are. Oh, that's pretty cool. This should be our hub assembly, which it is. And this is the Dynapro kit, and I'll put the part number in the description. Got our drilled and slotted rotors. I put a kit on this recently on the Chevelle. I was surprised that it has the coating on there. It burns right off. And we've got the other rotor, and that is all. So we'll go ahead and go through this kit and start putting it together. All right, so I previously said manual power brakes. Don't know what I was thinking. What I meant was that it was drum or disc brake spindles. So this works with either the drum or disc brake spindle. It does not matter. So the first thing we're going to do, you can see we've got everything laid out. First thing we're going to do is install these caliper brackets. Let's get the hardware and then we'll start installation. All right, so this is pretty straightforward installation. It's not that bad. First thing you have to do is you have to make sure you have the correct bracket. These brackets are opposite of each other. They only work one way. You want this back side, this caliper mounting flange to actually be on the back side. It does show that it needs to be facing, the caliper is going to be facing forward. So we're going to put it on just like this. For hardware, you'll have 4 bolts that go on here. Pretty easy again. Just a washer underneath the head, washer underneath the nut. So let's go ahead and install this. All right, you are going to have one longer bolt, and that's for that aft one, lower aft, which goes to the steering arm. It's much thicker there. Pretty simple. We're going to go ahead and torque these down to 30 foot-pounds and do the other side, and then we'll keep on moving on. I'm barely going to snug these down, and then we're going to torque them all at once to 30 foot-pounds. All right, so the next step is we're going to take our hubs and we're going to install the studs, the wheel studs in there. What's really neat about this kit is it's drilled and tapped for 2 different wheel configurations, either the 5x4.5 or the 5x4 3/4. This one we're going to go the 4.5. So we'll just go ahead and screw these in, and then we'll do both of them, and then we'll move on to our next step. Well, I would be using my air ratchet, but of course my air compressor's out, so we're just going to use my my impact. Okay, our next step is we're going to install the large bearings on the back side of the hubs. We got to pack these full of grease. People do this several different ways, and I know they've got those little automatic ones that you can put on there. They don't pack them, but of course I'm old school with this. I've been doing this ever since my dad had a standard station, not Amoco, not BP, standard. So it's been a long time ago. So we're going to go ahead and get these things packed and get them in, and then we're going to also put in the seals on top of that. I know a lot of people probably never done it this way. When you do it this way, you just keep on doing it till it starts coming up from in between the outer race and the inner race. And that's about all you need. I do like to put a little bit extra on the inside, cake this up a little bit. All right, so let's go ahead and get these seals knocked in. You want to get something with the almost the exact same diameter as the outer part of that seal, and we've got a socket that's the exact same size. These things never want to go in straight, I swear. So we got that one knocked in. Looks pretty good. All right, so set your hubs aside. What we're going to do next is assemble the rotors. These rotors, when you do assemble them, make sure that this is flat up top, that it's offset this way. You can see that you don't want it that way with the flanges on the bottom. So you want them sitting up on top. This is your adapter plate. These adapter plates, I'm sure they do it this way so they can change out for the different configurations. Pretty smart. So we're going to install these button head screws. They have to be torqued to 25 foot-pounds. You do have to use this Loctite 271 on this. Just a little dab on each one of these screws. One thing I will mention, I'll probably mention again throughout this video, is that this does have a direction on it. It has a little arrow. I don't know if you guys can see that. Make sure you install this when we install it as a complete assembly, and that it's rotating in the correct direction. So let's go ahead and put this together. All right, make sure these flanges are up. Like I said before, this actually goes up, and we're going to put it just like this. Let's go ahead and screw this in. All right, we're going to go ahead and torque these down to 25 foot-pounds. I always like to recheck these, so I'll let it sit for a minute. I'll come back to this and check the torque again. All right, so we've got these all torqued down to 25 foot-pounds. Now we're going to take the hub and put it on here. We're going to bolt it on. Just be really careful with this. You don't want to force this on. When it's lined up, it's going to drop down. It just may take a little bit to get it completely lined up perfect. goes. All right, line your bolts. It's the same thing with these button head screws. They're a high torque screw. Make sure you have this 271 Loctite on here. Just put a little dab on there, and then we'll get these torqued down to 45 foot-pounds. All right, these are 45 foot-pounds. It's going to be a little tougher than the last one, so. All right, we got our rotors all bolted up. So now we need to pack this, the outer bearings full of grease, and then we'll be about ready to install these rotors. All right, so what I love about these hub adapters is there's no more trying to take off those dust boots and using a screwdriver and a hammer to try to knock these things off. You just unscrew these things, and then we're ready to install them. So let's go ahead and install. We're going to install the driver's side. Make sure your rotation is right. Make sure you're looking at that arrow on that rotor. Okay, let's go ahead and install this rotor now. I always like to put a little bit of grease all over this hub, over your spindle. You want that seal on the back side to actually slide on this. You don't want it to get nicked up. We have a new washer that comes with it, and you know it's indexed by the one slot that's in there. So we're going to use one of these. Let's go ahead and get this thing on. Got our greased up bearing. Our index washer. And our nut. So we are going to torque this to, it's 17 to 25 foot-pounds. And what we're going to do, and it's just what it's doing, is it's seating those bearings. So I've got this already set at 20. So you want to turn it. Now you're at 20. So what you're going to do now is back it off 1/2 of a turn. All right, so now we're going to torque this. Since we backed it off a 1/2 turn, we're going to torque this to 10 to 15 inch-pounds, which is hardly anything. It's basically hand tight. That's all it is. We're going to go ahead and see if we can't line up for our cotter key. And I think we're dead on. My cotter key's too big. I do have a smaller one. There we go. And I'll go ahead and trim this off. Kind of a long cotter key. We'll trim it off later on. So let's go ahead and move on to the other side. All right. So when you're doing these cotter keys, make sure that you get it set down inside the lower piece as far as you can, as close as you can to the spindle, just because you're putting that spin-on dust cap and you don't want it to interfere. This is where a good set of dikes, long ones, will really come in handy. There you go. We should be able to screw on one of those dust caps now. There we go. All right, so we're on the last part of this installation, which is also the most fun, and that is installing the calipers. We have to try and center the caliper onto that rotor. So don't put any thread locker on the bolts yet. What we have to initially do is we got a bolt with a washer on the head. We're going to stick one of these on both sides. Then you have to put 2 washers. Now these washers are all 35 thousandths. That's just going to give you get you close, and then you'll have to measure, make sure it's centered or close to being centered. And this is always a little tricky because they always want to fall off. Try and get it pulled out enough that you can maybe start that bolt. Now another thing you want to check on, because we're going to tighten this up, and you want to check to make sure the bolt isn't protruding past that caliper bracket to where you're really close to hitting the rotor. You want it almost flush. If you're not flush, then add another washer to the head of the bolt. And I can see we're sticking out probably a little over 1/16 inch, so we're probably going to have to add a washer to that head, an additional washer. So let's go ahead and tighten these up. They get torqued to 40 foot-pounds. I'm just getting them close just so we can get a good reading. And let's go ahead and measure. Now you're measuring from the rotor to the edge of the caliper, and we're going to see where we're at. I've got my verniers. Make sure that they zero out, which they do. And I am at about 565 thousandths. Let's try the other side. And we are at about 530 thousandths. That's about as good as we're going to be able to get it, because if we take out one side, that was 565, and it's 35,000. Now we'd be at 530, and then we'd add it to the other side, and well, now we'd be at 565. So we're about exactly where we need to go. So I'm going to take off this retainer that would actually hold on the pads, and then we are going to try and slide the pads in to make sure that they'll slide in all right. If they do, then I'll pull it back apart. We'll put some anti-seize on the bolts. We're going to add a washer on there to make sure, and we're going to do a test fit before we do that. And then, yeah, put some anti-seize on the bolts, and then we'll tighten them down to 40 foot-pounds. I am just now pulling out the bolt, and I've got the top one still tight. I want to try and see if I can add a washer to this. Yep, there goes my 2 washers underneath. I'm going to see if I can add a washer to the head and make sure it's flush on the back side of that caliper bracket. I don't want it extending that far out. All right, so I've got an extra washer, one of these 35 thousandths underneath the head, along with the other washer that goes under the head. And we are barely protruding on the other side of that caliper bracket, so it's not going to touch the rotor. We should be good. I'm going to go ahead and make sure these are both tight. And let's go ahead and pull off this retaining bolt. All right, let's go ahead and check out our pads. All right, so these are our set of pads. We just want to make sure that these are going to slide right in there. We're not going to have any interference, that the rotor was going to be able to turn, no problem. And we look like we're really good. Not touching it all. That's great. So I'll go ahead and pull these back out, and then we're going to go ahead and pull out these bolts, put some thread locker, not anti-seize on there, and then we'll torque it back down, and then we install these pads back on. For thread locker, remember we're using this Loctite 271, which it recommends on the entire installation. bolt protrusion is good. Let's go ahead and torque this down. Like I said, 40 foot-pounds. Good. Let's install these pads. No interference at all. Let's go ahead and add the retainer. You have to line up the retainer with the holes on the pad. Add your retainer bolt. I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on this. There we go. One installed, one down, one more to go. Alright, that completes this installation. Alright, so this pretty much wraps up the installation of these Wilwood brakes. These things are really easy to put together. It's a well thought out kit. I've never had any problems installing a set of these things. I've installed a few sets of them. I've also installed Bear brakes. They're about the same quality, but they're a little bit more pricey. I'll stick with Wilwood whenever I can. Matter of fact, I need to put a set of these on that El Camino right there. You can see how well these things look. I mean, these things just look outstanding. Other than that, it pretty much wraps up this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something, and I hope to see you on another episode of Torqued.